The night was unnaturally still, as though the desert itself was holding its breath. Moonlight stretched thin over the rocky cliffs, and in the distance, coyotes sang their mournful chorus. Clara Hathaway pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, the fabric no defense against the chill crawling over her skin. She should not have come here, she knew that well. Every story whispered in her. Settlement warned her never to tread near the Apache caves, carved into the side of the mountain, but curiosity was a cruel thing. For weeks she had heard the local children dare one another, talking about a relic hidden inside, a necklace glittering with stones that caught fire in the moonlight. They said it was cursed, that the Apache guarded it with their very lives, and that anyone foolish enough to touch it would vanish before dawn. Clara had laughed it off at first, yet the stories tugged at her, restless in her mind until she could no longer resist. And now here she was, standing at the mouth of the cavern, her lantern's weak flame fighting back the dark. The cave breathed cold air onto her face as though warning her away. The moment she stepped inside, the silence deepened. Her boots crunched against loose pebbles, each sound echoing too loudly, betraying her nerves. The walls narrowed the farther she went, and faint etchings glimmered in the torchlight symbols she didn't understand, spirals and jagged lines, as though telling stories carved by hands long dead. Then she saw a dot at the end of the chamber. Upon a flat altar of stone rested the necklace. It wasn't like the trinkets her people wore. This was older, alive in a way she could not explain. Silver links caught the glow of her lantern, and at its center hung a pendant carved of bone and obsidian, the two halves meeting like night and day. A faint hum seemed to rise from it, low and vibrating in her chest. Her breath hitched. She should leave. She should turn around now, but her hand moved before her reason could stop it. Her fingers brushed the cold metal, and in that instant a tremor rippled beneath her feet. The lantern flame sputtered violently. Clara gasped, jerking back, but it was too late. The necklace slid from the altar into her palm, chilling her skin like ice. The air thickened, the walls whispering with unseen voices. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. She tried to set it back, but her hand shook too violently. The cave groaned like a living thing. From the corner of her eye, shadows lengthened, shapes moving though nothing stood there. A sudden gust extinguished her lantern, plunging her into darkness. Heart hammering, Clara clutched the relic to her chest, sinking to her knees. Her father had told her once about sacred things never to be touched. He had called them boundaries, things belonging to another people, another world. Now his words rushed back like a cruel prophecy. "I took it off?" She whispered into the dark, as though the stone itself could hear her. "Please." Her plea broke into silence. The air shifted again, this time not with the whisper of spirits but with the unmistakable sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, and human. Clara froze, clutching the necklace tighter. From the shadows of the passage, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence commanding even in the dark. Moonlight from a crack above cut across his face, illuminating the war paint streaked over high cheekbones, the eagle feather tied in his long black hair. His chest rose and fell steadily, but his eyes, sharp and piercing as obsidian, fixed on the necklace in her trembling hand. An Apache warrior. For heartbeat, neither moved. The weight of her mistake pressed down on her chest until she could scarcely breathe. Her lips parted, words tumbling out raw, desperate. I took it off, please." Her voice cracked as the words left her, and in that moment his entire body stiffened. He froze not with fear, but with shock, as though he could not believe what he was seeing. No settler had ever dared to touch the sacred relic, let alone confess it aloud. The silence that followed was heavier than the earth itself. And somewhere deep in the cave, the whispers grew louder, hungrier. As though her confession had stirred something far worse than the warrior before her, Tala had been running all night. His moccasins carried him swift and silent across the stony ridges, his chest heaving with urgency. The elders had sent him when the fire cracked strange in the village, when the medicine man awoke from a dream of black smoke curling from the sacred cave. Something was wrong. He knew before they spoke that it was the relic. It always was. For generations, his people had guarded it, an object older than the memory of man, passed down through whispers, warnings, and blood. Tala had sworn to his ancestors he would never allow it to fall into outsider hands. And yet, the moment he entered the cavern's threshold, he felt it, the pulse, wrong and broken, echoing through the stone like a heartbeat out of rhythm. He moved soundlessly deeper inside, his hand brushing the haft of his knife, though he knew no ordinary weapon could fight what was awakening here. The smell of cold ashes and damp earth filled his lungs. Shadows bent and swayed along the walls, and then he saw her, a pale figure crouched before the altar, shoulders shaking, hair loose and tangled. She clutched the necklace to her chest like a child clutching stolen bread. His eyes narrowed. At first, all he felt was rage. This was the intruder who had defiled the place? This fragile girl in settler's dress? He expected some thief, hardened and cunning. But this one's hands trembled. Her breath came in broken gasps, and her eyes, wide and glistening with tears, were fixed not on him but on the shadows writhing in the air around them. Still Tala could not forgive. His people had bled for this relic. His father had died on the cliffside defending it from soldiers who tried to take it. The sight of her fingers gripping what had cost so much life struck him like a knife in the gut. He stepped forward. Gravel crunched beneath his foot, breaking the silence. Her head snapped up. When her eyes found his, she flinched as though she had been struck. "I took it off," she stammered, her voice catching. "Please." The words fell into the cavern like stones into a well, heavy and echoing. Tala froze, his jaw tightening. Of all the things she could have said, denials, excuses, even begging for mercy, she had admitted her guilt. Not only admitted it, but confessed with such raw fear it startled him. No settler would do that. His throat worked, but no words came. He had learned long ago that outsiders lied to save their skin. But she hadn't lied. She had told the truth, a truth that condemned her. The shadows on the walls thickened, rising higher. The necklace in her hands glowed faintly, its stones pulsing as though alive. Tala felt the shift deep in his bones. The spirit was waking. He should strike her down, now end the curse before it spread. That was the way of his people. A trespasser who touched the relic had to die. That was the law. But something in her eyes stopped him. They were not the eyes of a thief. They were the eyes of someone terrified, someone who had not understood until too late what she had done. He read desperation there and remorse, not arrogance. And beneath it, something he could not name. The spirit hissed through the cave, a sound like wind dragging claws across stone. The girl whimpered, curling tighter around the necklace as if it could shield her. Tala's breath caught in his chest. If he left her, the spirit would consume her soul. If he killed her, he would honor his oath but stain his hands with the blood of someone whose only crime was curiosity. For the first time in many seasons, Tala hesitated. He was an Apache warrior bound to duty. Yet his hand would not move to draw his blade. Instead, he stood rooted, eyes locked on the trembling girl before him. The earth groaned again, the ceiling shuddering with falling dust. There was no more time. He knew the choice would break him either way, and still something inside whispered that perhaps fate had led him here not to end her life, but to save it. The echo of her words still hung in the cavern like smoke. I took it off, please. Tala's chest tightened. The girl's confession was not only an admission, it was a curse spoken aloud. No settler before her had ever dared touch the relic and survive long enough to speak of it. Her words alone seemed to awaken something darker in the air, as though the spirit feeding on fear had been listening, waiting, for the first time in many moons. Tala felt his blood run cold. The Apache warrior had seen death on battlefields, had stared into the eyes of soldiers as arrows pierced their armor, had watched storms rage across the desert without flinching. But this was different. This was the unraveling of a promise older than him, older than his father, older even than the stones beneath their feet. And it was unraveling at the hands of this trembling girl who should never have stepped into his people's sacred ground. The necklace pulsed faintly in her grip, its obsidian pendant glimmering like a shard of night. Every heartbeat it gave off seemed to ripple through the cavern walls, shaking loose pebbles and dust. The earth was no longer still, it was listening. Tala's breath came hard, though he tried to steady it. He should have shouted at her, demanded why she came, what she thought she would gain. But no sound left his throat. Instead, he found himself caught in the raw honesty in her face. Her lips trembled. Her hands shook violently as if she wanted nothing more than to cast the necklace away. Tears brimmed at the corners of her eyes, catching the dim light until they glittered. She was terrified. Yes, but Tala saw something deeper, regret that she had not come here to steal. She had come here in foolishness, in ignorance. She knew now, and it was breaking her apart. The weight of that realization struck him like an arrow. If she had lied, if she had tried to run, he would have ended her swiftly. That would have been easier. But truth complicated everything. Her confession made her human in his eyes, not enemy. And that was dangerous. The spirit knew it too. A low rumble filled the cave, not from the ground but from the air itself. The shadows writhed like serpents, slithering up the walls, curling toward the girl. The whispers grew louder, fragments of words in a tongue even Tala's ancestors barely remembered. He stepped instinctively between her and the dark. His hand brushed the hilt of his knife. Though he knew steel would do little against what had been a WOKE behind him, the girl whimpered again. "I didn't mean," her voice cracked into a sob. "I thought it was just a story. Please, I didn't know." Her words struck like blows against his chest. Didn't know. Didn't understand. That was always the way of her people. They dismissed what they could not own. They called legends foolish until they stumbled into truth, and then they begged for mercy. Yet this one's plea was different. She wasn't bargaining for her life. She was begging forgiveness not from him, but from the earth itself, from the spirit that even now stretched hungrily toward her. Tala froze. Torn in two. His people's law was clear. The one who broke the relic's rest must pay with blood. To let her live was to invite ruin. If the spirit's hunger wasn't fed, it would seek more, spilling beyond these caves into the land, into his village. He had been raised to believe there was only one path, and yet her tears, her voice, her truth, he remembered his mother's words, whispered to him when he was still a boy. Not all hearts that trespass mean harm. Some are led by spirits for reasons we cannot yet see. Was this such a moment? The ground shook harder now. Stones cracked overhead, sending chips of rock scattering at their feet. Time was running out. The girl clutched the necklace tighter as though it burned her, sobbing, "Please help me." Tala's body went rigid. His duty screamed at him to end it, to end her. But something deeper, something older rose inside him. He could not. He would not. For in that single desperate cry, he heard not only fear, but trust. Trust in him. And that more than the spirit, more than the law of his people, left him frozen in shock. The cave itself seemed to breathe. At first it was subtle, just a faint rush of air that brushed against. Clara's hair like a cold hand. But then it grew stronger until the cavern walls moaned with the sound of shifting stone, until shadows stretched unnaturally long across the ground, moving as if alive. Tala's every muscle tightened. He had felt this presence once before as a boy when the elders performed a ceremony at the relic's altar. Then it had been a whisper-controlled, bound, kept at bay by chance and smoke. But now it was no longer bound. It was waking. The spirit was hungry. Clara clung to the necklace, her knuckles white, her breaths coming in shallow gasps. She could not explain why she held on to it instead of dropping it. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps some invisible force kept it tethered to her hands. All she knew was that the more it pulsed, the colder her body became, until she could barely feel her fingertips. Her eyes lifted to the cave walls, and her breath caught in her throat. The shadows weren't just shifting. They were forming. From the blackness emerged the outline of a figure tall, distorted, its limbs too long, its eyes hollow caverns glowing faintly with pale fire. Its chest heaved with the sound of distant thunder. And when it opened its mouth, the cavern filled with a howl that rattled the stone and echoed deep into Clara's bones. Her scream tore free before she could stop it. Tala stepped forward, instinctively shielding her with his body. His knife flashed in his hand, though he knew steel meant nothing here. Still, he held it, not for the spirit, but for her, because it gave her something to focus on, something human in the midst of terror. "Do not move," he said sharply, his voice low. Commanding. Clara clutched his sleeve, trembling. "What is it? Oh God, what have I done?" His jaw tightened. He wanted to spit the truth at her, that she had unleashed a curse older than her people's towns, that her ignorance might damn them both. But when he looked at her face, pale and streaked with tears, the words stuck in his throat. What use was blame now? The spirit stepped closer. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing down on them until every breath was labor. Its whispering voice slithered into Tala's ears, speaking in fragments of his ancestors' tongue, promising power, blood, and destruction. He forced the words out between clenched teeth. "It is the spirit of hunger. And it wants you." Clara's knees buckled. She nearly collapsed, but Tala's arm shot out, steadying her. The contact sent a strange jolt through him, her warmth against his skin, fragile yet desperate. The relic pulsed harder, as though feeding the spirit's strength. Clara whimpered, pressing it away from her body, but the chain coiled tighter around her fingers like a serpent refusing to be cast aside. Tala's mind raced. If the relic was not returned to its altar, the spirit would fully awaken, breaking free of the cave to roam the desert, consuming anything it touched. His people's laws were clear. The trespasser must die, and the relic must be restored with blood. That was the way to seal it again. But could he strike her down here? Could he silence her cries with his blade when her tears begged for another way? The spirit surged, its hollow eyes flaring with brighter fire. Stones cracked under its weightless steps, though it left no footprints. A wind howled from nowhere, ripping through the cave, tugging Clara's hair loose, tossing it wildly across her face. "I don't want to die," she whispered brokenly. The words pierced him. He had heard men beg on battlefields, had seen warriors clutch wounds and cry out for mercy. But none of their pleas had struck him like hers did now. He had a choice and no time. If he left the relic in her hands, she would be consumed. If he tried to take it by force, the spirit would lash out at them both. If he killed her, he would honor the law but betray something inside himself he couldn't name. The cave trembled again, dust and shards of stone raining from the ceiling. Clara clung to him now, sobbing against his arm, her voice raw with terror. "Help me. Please, help me." Tala's pulse hammered. He had no more time to wrestle with duty. Instinct roared louder than law. louder than fear. And in that moment, the Apache warrior made his desperate move. He seized her hand, pried the relic from her trembling fingers, and prepared to face the spirit himself. The instant Tala tore the relic from Clara's hands, the cave erupted. A roar like a storm surged through the chamber, shaking the ground with such force that stalactites cracked and shattered, crashing into the floor. Clara shrieked, stumbling as the earth lurched beneath her feet, but Tala's grip on her wrist held firm. The obsidian pendant burned in his palm, searing his skin, but he refused to let go. The spirit screamed, its hollow body swelling larger, its fire-lit eyes blazing with fury. The shadows of the cavern twisted like torn fabric, slamming against the walls as if the cave itself might collapse. "Run!" Tala barked. He pulled her after him with brutal urgency, his stride sure-footed despite the chaos. Clara stumbled on loose rocks, her skirts tangling around her legs, but his arm was iron around her, dragging her through the crumbling passage. Every breath she took was choked with dust, every step a fight to keep from falling. Behind them, the spirit pursued, its howl reverberating through the stone. The whispers clawed at her mind, voices she did not understand, but which filled her with crushing despair. "Give in, give in. It is useless to run." "No," Clara whispered hoarsely, tears streaking through the grime on her face. "Please, not like this." Tala glanced back only once. The sight chilled him, the spirit filling the tunnel, its arms stretching unnaturally long, its fingers curling toward Clara as if eager to snatch her away. His heart hammered harder, driving his legs faster. The passage narrowed, forcing them to duck under jagged stone. A boulder crashed down inches behind them, sealing the way shut with a thunderous boom. Dust and pebbles rained over their heads. Clara coughed violently, nearly collapsing. Tala caught her by the waist, steadying her. "Move!" His voice was raw, the command more plea than order. She tried. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed for rest, but she obeyed, trusting him. Step after step, she stumbled forward, guided only by his grip and the fire in his eyes. The relic in Tala's hand pulsed faster now, its light bleeding through his fist in sharp bursts. It was alive, angry, fighting to return to the altar it had been ripped from. He gritted his teeth, the pain unbearable, but he held on. The tunnel split ahead into two jagged paths. Clara froze, chest heaving, panic widening her eyes. Which way? Tala didn't hesitate. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, feeling the pull of the relic, the faint hum that pointed back to the altar. His head snapped left. This way. They plunged into the darker passage, the walls so close now they scraped their shoulders. Clara's lantern, long extinguished, swung uselessly from her belt. Only the faint glow from the relic lit their path in pulses of sickly light. The spirit's howl followed, shaking the very stone, and Clara nearly tripped again. This time, when she faltered, Tala swept her into his arms without slowing, carrying her as if she weighed nothing. She gasped, clutching at his chest, staring up at him through her tears. His face was grim, set with determination, his jaw locked against the pain of the relic burning into his flesh. For the first time, she saw not only a warrior but a man fighting for both their lives, driven by something fiercer than duty. "Tala," she whispered, though she wasn't sure how she knew his name. Perhaps it was carried in the whispers. Perhaps she had heard it spoken in the settlement long ago. He did not answer. His focus was ahead, where the tunnel widened into a cavern glowing faintly red. But the spirit was closing fast. Its whispers grew louder, pressing against Clara's skull until she cried out, clutching her head. Tala's heart clenched at the sound, but he pushed harder, his legs burning as he leapt across uneven rock, his arms refusing to release her even as exhaustion clawed at his muscles. Then came the collapse. With a shriek, The spirit slammed into the tunnel walls, shattering stone. A cascade of boulders rained down behind them, the sound deafening. Dust swallowed them whole. For a terrifying moment, Tala thought they would be buried alive. But somehow, by sheer instinct, he dove forward, shielding Clara with his body as stone crashed around them. When the tremors ceased, he looked up to see the path behind sealed completely. The spirit's howl was muffled now. Trapped beyond the wall of stone for the moment, Clara trembled in his arms, her face pale and streaked with dust. She whispered through cracked lips, You saved me." Tala's grip on the relic tightened, its heat blistering his palm. His eyes hardened. "Not yet," he said. "The spirit still lives, and it will not stop until the relic is returned." He set her gently on her feet. She swayed but clung to his arm, nodding with terrified resolve. Together, bruised and breathless, they pushed onward into the heart of fire. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast Clara could not see the far wall. Heat struck her like a furnace, searing her lungs, drying the tears on her cheeks before they could fall. She stumbled back, shielding her face, but Tala strode forward without flinching. His broad shoulders squared as though the inferno itself were just another enemy to confront. The floor ahead was split by a chasm, a jagged wound in the earth. From its depths rose fire, not the orange flames of a campfire, but wild plumes of red and blue, twisting and writhing like living serpents. Sparks hissed upward, filling the cavern with the scent of scorched stone. The only path forward was a narrow strip of rock that arched across the gorge like a broken bridge. Clara's knees buckled at the sight. "We can't," she whispered hoarsely. "It's impossible. We'll fall." Tala cut her off with a glance, his dark eyes fierce. "We must. The altar lies beyond. If we turn back, the spirit will take us before the next breath." Clara stared at him, trembling. The flames reflected in his face, making him look carved from fire and shadow. Her instinct screamed at her to collapse, to give up, to let fate swallow her whole. But his gaze burned into her, unyielding, steady. And in that gaze she found something stronger than her terror. She nodded weakly. Then, "I'll follow." Tala reached for her hand, calloused fingers closing firmly around hers. His other hand clutched the relic, its glow pulsing in rhythm with the flames below, as though feeding the fire. He ignored the blistering pain. Pain was nothing compared to failure. They stepped onto the narrow path. The stone trembled beneath their weight, small pebbles tumbling into the abyss. The flames hissed eagerly, as if waiting for them to fall. Clara's grip on Tala's hand tightened until her knuckles whitened. Each step was agony, her vision swimming with heat, her legs weak from exhaustion. Halfway across, a roar shook the cavern. The spirit had found them again. It appeared above the chasm, a towering silhouette woven of smoke and flame, its arms stretching across the gorge like wings. Its hollow eyes blazed brighter than the fire below, and its voice rumbled through the stone, a language Clara could not understand, but one that filled her with despair so sharp it felt like claws tearing at her heart. She faltered, her foot slipping on the crumbling edge. With a scream, she pitched sideways straight toward the inferno. Tala reacted instantly. He dropped the relic into his satchel and seized her waist, yanking her back onto the path. Her body collided with his chest, her face buried against him as the heat roared around them. He held her there, one arm like iron across her back. Her breath came in ragged sobs. I can't do this." His voice was steady low, fierce enough to cut through her terror. "Yes, you can. You still breathe. That means the spirit has not claimed you. While breath is in your chest, you fight." She looked up at him through blurred eyes. His face was set with determination, sweat streaking his temple, his jaw locked tight, but his words anchored her. Somehow, against all reason, she believed him. Together. They moved again, step by step, the spirit's wails battering their ears. Clara forced herself to keep her eyes forward, never down. Trusting only Tala's grip to guide her. At last, the bridge of stone ended. They stumbled onto solid ground, collapsing to their knees. Clara's chest heaved with sobs of relief. But Tala's eyes never left the spirit. It loomed on the far side, writhing with fury, the flames below answering its rage. For now, it was barred from crossing, but its howl promised it would not be denied for long. Tala rose, lifting Clara with him. His voice was grim. The altar is close. If we return the relic now, we end this. Clara nodded, wiping her tear-streaked face with shaking hands. She had no strength left, but she forced her body to move. For Tala, for herself. For a chance to undo what she had unleashed, hand in hand they pressed on, deeper into the cavern where the heart of the curse awaited. The cavern narrowed once more, funneling them into a chamber vast and round, its walls slick with black stone that seemed to drink the firelight. At its center stood the altar, a squat block of rock carved smooth by centuries of ritual. Upon its face, grooves and spirals glimmered faintly, as though the stone itself remembered the chants once spoken over it. Clara stumbled to a halt, chest heaving. Sweat and soot streaked her pale face, her hair clinging in damp strands across her cheeks. She looked at the altar and nearly collapsed with relief. "It's here," she whispered. "We can end this." But Tala did not answer. His eyes were fixed beyond her shoulder. The spirit had followed. It oozed through the walls like smoke, stretching higher, broader, until its form scraped the cavern ceiling. Its eyes were pits of fire, and its roar thundered so loud Clara dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. The ground shook violently, cracks splitting across the chamber floor. From the fissures spilled more flame, licking hungrily toward the altar as though to consume it before they could act. Tala's jaw clenched. His hand went to his satchel, pulling free the relic. The moment it touched the open air, the spirit screamed louder, its voice a shriek of fury and hunger. The pendant writhed in his hand, burning, almost alive, trying to leap back into the shadows. Clara's eyes widened in horror. "It doesn't want to go back." "It must," Tala growled. His voice was low but steady, laced with the weight of his ancestors. He stepped forward, every muscle taut as the spirit lashed out, sending a wave of heat that knocked Clara flat. She coughed, choking on the ash, and lifted her head to see Tala silhouetted against the blaze, unmoving, unbending. The spirit's whispers filled the chamber now, thick as smoke. Words hissed in a language older than empires. Power. Strength. Vengeance. It offered him everything, promised him dominion if only he turned from the altar. Tala gritted his teeth. He had heard this voice once before as a child peeking at a forbidden ceremony. He remembered how the medicine man warned them. The spirit bargains. It tempts, but it speaks only lies. If you listen, it owns you. He forced his steps forward. "Please." Clara's voice cracked behind him. She crawled toward him on shaking hands, her eyes wide with desperation. "Don't let it take you. You're stronger than it is." Her plea struck him harder than the spirit's fury. Her faith, raw, undeserved, wrapped around him like armor. He tightened his grip on the relic, ignoring the pain as it seared his palm to the bone. He reached the altar. The spirit screamed, lashing forward, its smoke arms clawing through the air. Fire seared his back, pushing him to his knees. Clara cried out, stumbling toward him, her hands reaching as though she could shield him. Tala pressed the relic to the stone. Nothing. The altar rejected it, the grooves pulsing but refusing to accept. The spirit's laughter hissed through the chamber, a sound that chilled Clara more than any scream. "No!" she cried, scrambling to her feet. She staggered forward, nearly falling into the flames. Why isn't it working? Tala's chest heaved. He realized the truth too late. The altar demanded not just the relic's return, but sacrifice. It always had. The necklace could not be restored without blood, without a life. The law of his people echoed in his ears. The trespasser must die. That was the way. His gaze flicked to Clara. She was staring at him, confusion and terror in her eyes. Her lips trembled, forming the words before she even knew them. It wants me. He felt the knife at his belt like a weight. He knew what tradition demanded. He had been raised to believe this was the only way. And yet, when he looked at her shaking, broken, her eyes glistening with tears, he knew he could not raise his blade. Against her, not this girl, not the one who had confessed, who had trusted him, who even now whispered his name like a prayer. He turned back to the altar, his decision hardening inside him. If blood was needed, it would be his. Clara saw the change in his eyes, and her heart lurched. No, Tala, no. But he was already lifting the relic high, chanting in his ancestors' tongue. Ready to give everything, the spirit lunged. Flames swallowing the chamber in a final surge of fury. The cavern pulsed with firelight, the spirit's fury crashing around them like a storm. Tala's chant rose above the chaos, a deep, resonant prayer that seemed to come not only from his chest, but from the bones of his people themselves. His words struck the walls, echoing with a force that made even the spirit recoil. Clara reached for him, terror flooding her veins. She saw the relic burning in his hand, saw his face pale with pain, saw blood already dripping from his clenched fist where the sacred metal had scorched through flesh. Her heart stopped when she realized what he intended. He was offering himself. The altar flared as if hungering for his life. The grooves in the stone glowed, veins of crimson light spidering outward, pulling at him. His knees buckled, yet his voice did not falter. No. Clara screamed. With the last of her strength, she staggered forward, hurling herself against him, hands covering his burned one. The relic seared her palms instantly, and she cried out, but she did not let go. The spirit roared, flame and shadow thrashing violently, as though the union of two lives was something it could not comprehend. Together, she gasped, forcing the words through clenched teeth. If it demands blood, it takes both. Not just you. Tala's eyes widened, locking on hers. He saw the pain in her face, the sincerity that blazed fiercer than the fire around them. For a breathless moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, the warrior and the settler's daughter. Bound by desperation and choice, something shifted in the altar. Instead of pulling harder, the red light softened as though the stone recognized the act of unity. The relic pulsed once, then sank into the altar's surface. A surge of air rushed outward, cold and clean, extinguishing the flames in a violent gust. The spirit shrieked, its massive form convulsing, unraveling into wisps of shadow that the cavern devoured like smoke. And then, silence. The floor stilled. The fire vanished. Only the faint glow of the altar remained, humming with peace instead of hunger. Tala collapsed backward, dragging Clara with him. They hit the stone floor together, gasping, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. The smell of ash clung to them, but the choking pressure in the air was gone. Clara's palms were raw and blistered, yet she did not release his hand. Tears streamed down her soot-stained cheeks. "You were going to give your life," she whispered. "Why?" His chest rose and fell heavily. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply stared at her, the woman who had caused the disaster, yet also stood with him when she could have fled. The woman who, by touching the relic, had defied death itself. Finally, his voice came rough, low. "Because my life is mine to give, not yours to take. And I would not let the spirit claim you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to insist that it should not have been him, but the words died when she saw the truth in his eyes. She touched his face with shaking fingers, smearing soot across his cheek. Then we saved each other. He did not move away from her touch. For a man taught that outsiders were enemies, that settlers meant only theft and ruin, the gentleness of her hand unsettled him more than any spirit. He had expected to feel only duty and rage. Instead, he felt, bound not by blood spilled, but by blood spared. The cavern seemed almost reverent in its quiet, as though it, too, acknowledged what had just been forged between them. Tala finally pushed himself to his feet, wincing as he pulled her up beside him. Their hands, though blistered and burned, remained clasped. He looked at the altar one last time, its glow fading into ordinary stone. The relic was sealed again. The danger had passed, but something else had begun. Clara searched his face, fear and hope mingling in her voice. "What happens now?" His dark eyes softened, though his words carried a weight she could not yet understand. "Now you walk with me. The Spirit saw us together, it will not forget. Neither can we." She wanted to ask more, but her body was too weary, her heart too full. She simply nodded. For the first time since stepping into that cursed cave, she felt safe, not because the danger was gone, but because Tala was still at her side. He did not release her hand as they walked toward the cavern's mouth, toward the faint streak of dawn waiting to break the desert sky. Both bore wounds. Both bore scars. But both had survived together. The silence between them was not empty. It was the beginning of a bond, quiet yet unbreakable, forged in fire, shadow, and choice.